All right, so hello everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jeremy Fletcher. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ledgerama. Ledgerama recently developed and released the Wallawallet application for HBAR on Android and iOS. And today we decided that we'd get together and talk a little bit about Rob's development experience. Robert Keynes is our CTO and also the co-founder of Ledgerama, and he's the lead developer on Wallawallet. And there's always questions floating around about how to build a wallet, how difficult is it, how easy is it, what kinds of things can you expect, what kinds of backgrounds do people need to get in and start developing in cryptocurrency space and all those kinds of things. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to reach out to the community and give a little insight into what our experience working with Hedera Hashgraph and HBAR has been. So I decided we'd get a little bit of Rob's insights here. So I'll just go ahead and start off. Rob, if you could just talk a little bit about your background, what skills you have that you brought into the space before you even really learned about Hedera Hashgraph. What kind of background did you have?
Sure. I graduated NC State University many years ago, 98, I think.
Into the North Carolina State, yeah.
Yeah, with a BS in computer science, and I have a journalism degree from before that when I was at Virginia Tech. And but so I did that. I started working for companies for years now. Companies like Intelligent Information Systems, which is where I began. I've worked, as a contractor for companies like IBM and Tivoli and USPS, and I worked at Railink for a long time, both as a contractor and a full-time employee, and writing software for the railway industries so that they could, basically handle the flow of millions of messages for cars. Like when they would go over wheel sensors, they would detect whether or not there was a deformity in the wheel and then route the car to a shop, that kind of thing. So that was the inspection quality project, which I worked on, and which
that is really cutting edge kind of IoT stuff. I mean, that is really cool. Like all the the sensors. I mean, just that is the railway gone to the modern age, right? I mean, sensors monitoring the wheels that can report problems with the wheels or with the tracks before anybody knows them or before any problems go seriously wrong. That's really cool stuff.
Now, at the time, we had some constraints. There we had to use some older technologies, but I tell you, man, Hedera Hashgraph might be a really good fit for some of the things that we did there as far as the inspection quality project. Especially like securing certain information that others shouldn't be able to see and all that.
Right.
There's a lot of a good fit there for the technology.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I did that for years, senior software developer there. And after that, I met you I met you after the hackathon.
Right.
So I didn't really meet you there at it, but I learned about Hedera Hashgraph because of my interest in the crypto space.
So we flew out to Dallas to the hackathon on our own dime. We bought our own plane tickets. We weren't going there for training or for anything else. What was it that drew you to Hedera Hashgraph, and why'd you buy that plane ticket to go fly and compete in that hackathon?
Well, for the years before that, I was interested in cryptocurrency and Ethereum and Bitcoin and a whole lot of others. And I had been talking to a friend of mine, his name is Dusty, about an idea that he had that I kind of married with cryptocurrency, which would solve some interesting problems in the world that, to my knowledge, this application doesn't exist yet. And it's kind of a long lead vision that I'm striving towards. So that when I heard that Hedera, when I saw the New York announcement, which was in 2017, and I've been following it ever since, looking for information on it. And as soon as I heard about the hackathon, that was the first hackathon, that I had ever come out for. I was really interested in the technology because of the speed, the finality in seconds, the security, scalability, decentralization, all of it. It works really well with this long lead vision that I have for this application that I really want to build. And so I decided, why not head out there, participate in the hackathon, meet some people, and see if I can find others who are also interested in following that same path. And I love the fact that Hedera is pretty serious about this. They're putting together a council of corporations. Like having worked at Railink, for example, we're not just going to pick some technology there to use like Ethereum with all the issues that they have, high fees, unpredictable fees, for example. but Hedera has solutions for many of these problems, and it's more secure than Bitcoin. And with finality in seconds, it would be a great solution even for some of the problems that we've seen when I was at Railink.
Right.
But I still have that entrepreneurial spirit, and I do want to use my talents and skills that I've accumulated over the last 20 years in software development and do something bigger than I've done in the past, and go out and pursue this long lead vision. And there is a technology really that I've been waiting for to be able to do that.
Yeah, the speed and the scalability. I mean, I tell you, the first time I interacted with Bitcoin, and people that have heard me talk before may have heard me talk about it, but my first interaction with Bitcoin was with a paper wallet, and so I had a paper wallet. It was a friend's that he had gotten years before. We had no idea how much Bitcoin was on it. Thought we were going to be millionaires. Turns out it was only like $80 worth of Bitcoin, but it was so anyway. I scanned it, swept the wallet. It was $80 worth of Bitcoin. It took 24 hours to transmit into my wallet, and it cost me $10. And I said, well, boy, I was so excited about Bitcoin until my first experience with it. And then I love Bitcoin. I think it's awesome. I still have some Bitcoin. It is just, it doesn't move fast, right? And so I said, okay, Bitcoin's kind of cool, but we need something else because this isn't fast enough for me to buy a cup of coffee with it. And then the first time I ever transacted with Hedera, I was like, yes, this is it. Finality in seconds, transaction was done. I could buy a cup of coffee with this. I could do any financial transaction I want to do with this. And there's in the speed and the finality. I mean, then that's when it opens up all the cool things like IoT devices and all this other cool stuff that Hedera can handle. So yeah, so speed and finality, big bonuses in the Hedera Hashgraph world.
Yeah. So as far as the long lead vision goes, we had to start somewhere, and it was Cooper Kunz who recommended, well, you guys are going to need a wallet anyway to do this.
That's
Why
right.
not? Why not start building that? So, I was at first I was kind of hesitant, but then again I was like, well, we really do need one, and we probably want it to be built the way that we want to build it. So, uh, yeah, we started that. I think last May was when we started coding it, right?
Right.
A year and a half ago or so, and here we are, and we're getting ready to release the token, the initial version of the token support, which will be just sending, basically sending tokens and getting the token metadata, that kind of thing. But
Right. Yeah. It's been a long and winding road, but we're starting to see some nice traction, and people are really starting to love the wallet. I love seeing all the reactions I'm getting back from the community. It's been a fun journey. So when building the wallet, what SDK was used? I know we've kind of dabbled with a bunch of different stuff. So let's get a little bit into the SDK stuff.
well, there was really no official SDK that ran on the iPhone, right? So that was a big tricky thing for us. And early on, a community member, Christian Holman, he spent a long time figuring out how to hack the JavaScript SDK to get it to run on an iPhone and on a React Native environment, basically, so that we could run it
Right.
on the iPhone. And so I used his code. I forked his repo and was able to get that to work. And the very first versions of Wallawallet used the JavaScript for the iOS, but then it used, I'm also a Java pro. I've been doing Java for decades now, so probably almost 2 decades. So I had used the Java SDK for Android initially. So now I'm maintaining, code for two different SDKs. And, the nice thing about React Native is you theoretically write it all once and then runs on both Android and iPhone, right? Um, of course, it's not flawless by any means. I had to learn a lot about React Native, and constantly dealing with and upgrading the components, and all of that can be quite tricky. But
So if you don't mind, just real briefly, why React Native versus something like Flutter or any of the other mobile environments?
Flutter was too new at the time in a smaller community, about a year and a half ago, and it was I didn't want to do that because I figured it would really slow me down, right? So if there were components that I really needed that nobody had developed or were really immature, I wanted to be able to put our wallet into production very quickly, without issues like that, and without having to take time to redesign or build something from scratch, or work with code that was just not mature enough.
Right.
So that was a big reason for doing that. And then it came down to between React Native and Ionic, and some other frameworks that I was looking at too. And in the end, React Native kind of won out just because of the scope of the community, even though it takes a little longer to build something on React Native, so they say. and I've certainly had some issues. In the end, it's been a pretty decent experience overall. I mean, it could be much worse. So
Right.
the problems that I mostly had were dealing with, the Hedera SDKs. And, so we wanted to add token support, but there wasn't a JavaScript SDK. When they went to the version 2, of course, Christian's hack didn't work anymore on the version 2 of the SDK. And so that didn't work on React Native. And honestly, I spent a little bit of time looking at it, but it was pretty complex and low level stuff. I didn't want to get into trying to fix those issues myself. So I kind of rationalized figuring that, hey, if I got the Golang SDK to work on both platforms, maybe it'll be faster, and writing tests and everything for it will be simple, and it'll be one code base to maintain and all that. I did end up going that route, and we were in production with that for, I don't know, maybe 4 months or something like that.
Right.
So we got some good time out of it and in production, and we're able to add, some new things, I think. But and because ideally I do want to keep the same SDK, and I want to keep the code the same, so it's less to maintain and less to test. And but towards the end of that, I was really getting kind of fatigued by writing bridge code, and then when I started to have to deal with the tokens, it was I had to start moving more and more data across and serialize and deserialize it, and then I was like, well, this is getting to be tedious and a lot of work, and I shouldn't have to do this. Fortunately, at that time, Hedera came back. I think it was last December or so, where me and Shiva had opened tickets about the SDK running in React Native, and now it didn't work. And finally, a couple of months ago, they came back and said that they think they got it to work. And so, yeah, going through a couple of additional issues, we did finally get it to work, and they had to fix an issue with the cryptography library, which wasn't properly running in React Native as well. So once they got that fixed,
Right.
now I was good to go. So I swapped SDKs again. So I went from originally Android and JavaScript version 1 to Golang. We were in production with Golang for a while, and now I'm switched over to the JS SDK, version 2, 2.0.25, I think is what I'm
Right.
talking about. And to be able to support HTS, and I use that to be able to add the HTS features for the user interface that we're going to be releasing soon. So.
Right. So yeah, thinking about the SDKs, that has been a bumpy road for sure. And one of the things that I just have to continually remind myself is that Hedera is a startup just like us.
That's right.
They may have a bigger bag of money, and they may have the governing council members and stuff. Obviously, they're a very powerful startup, but at the end of the day, they're still a startup, and so so there's stops and starts, and they don't necessarily know exactly what the customers like us, right? In this sense, we're the customers. We need the SDKs to work properly. There's things that it was definitely a bumpy road, but in their defense, when I reached out and made it clear, once they were aware of the problem, they got much more heavily involved and more hands-on with the SDKs and helping us get to a place where those were usable. And that's an ongoing process. But it certainly has not been an easy road, but it's software development. And if there's anything I'm learning about it, it's that it's never easy. So
yeah, software and development in general is very hard, and there's no question about that. And decades of experience, it definitely helps. So there's I mean, we did lose several months of productivity due to SDK related issues, workarounds, research, trial and error, proof of concept stuff that we were trying to get working, and it was unfortunate, but that's the way it is sometimes. And I was not interested in learning the really low level protobuf API, which is extremely complicated. And
so is that so with the protobuf, that's basically low level. That's like a lower level below the SDKs. Is that right? So you could
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you could kind of bypass some of the stuff by dealing directly with the protobuf layer, but that's not ideal, is what it sounds like.
It's definitely not ideal, and with the way things change, and I mean, having to deal with the protocol at that level, it adds a tremendous amount of risk to the project, and I did not want to go there. So
Right. So were there some other challenges? So what were some of the other challenges that you ran against in developing Wallawallet?
So
Like there's been a number of issues with the mirror node, or
Yeah.
with, well, not issues with
Well,
the mirror node, but just issues with getting what's the best way for us to get the data from the
that's right.
mirror node for the users. All those kinds of things have been a little bit of a
That's right. So
who's next and who's
there
on
has been
first and what's on second.
there has been difficulties getting data and figuring out how to get it and where from, and Dragon Glass, I mean, they're doing the best that they can, but one of the things that they didn't support was the token transfers in their API for transactions, which I really need. And I asked them about it, and they agreed to add a token transfer flag, but that wasn't good enough. So in the end, I had, fortunately, Hedera just recently opened up a public mirror node, and I talked to one of the developers there, and he told me that it should be safe for us to use it for a wallet. It's not going to have 24/7 enterprise support. So if it goes down, people might have trouble viewing their transactions on the phone until the next business day that they fix it. So that is unfortunate for us at the moment. We're going to have to live with it for now, but at some point maybe we'll have to run our own mirror node. We'll have to figure that out.
The
But
people at Dragon Glass have been awesome. I mean,
yeah,
the folks over at Dragon Glass have been really cool and really responsive. It's like all of us; they're dealing with they've got a lot on their plate too. But yeah,
absolutely.
so certainly, I mean, the experience has been great at Dragon Glass. But when you find that there's just certain things that they don't have that you need, you
Yeah.
got to start looking for solutions somewhere else. Unless they come out and, hey, oh yeah, actually we solved that. Then,
Yeah.
but yeah, but you've got to solve the problems that you have on your plate.
Well, it's we will be using Dragon Glass still for some of our queries, and
Right.
specifically for some of the token related queries, because it's kind of broken on Hedera at the moment for their mirror node. One of the issues that I was having, like if you have a treasury account and the treasury account has tokens in it, and you try to fetch all the tokens, token metadata for those tokens, you get an empty array back. You won't get the data back for it if it's part of the treasury. So that was something that they overlooked, and but they're going to work on fixing that. So the nice thing, of course, about the Hedera public node is it's free too. I mean, Dragon Glass does charge you for use of their service, and I'm not against that. I mean, businesses have to survive; they have to charge for services, of course.
Right.
And so, anyways, yeah, we are a startup. We don't have a ton of resources and time to fix all the issues that that we encounter. We do the best we can. I don't think there's anything that we could have really done differently. We're working with Hedera as best we can. They've been pretty responsive. They've been addressing the issues. They're looking at the mirror node issue. There's a defect open, and they know what the problem is and looking into it. And fortunately, they've fixed the other SDK issues that we've run into as well. So
Right. Right. So where are we at with the SDKs now? So the Golang, so we moved on. So basically we
so
moved on past the Golang now and we're back to JavaScript, right?
yeah, so now we're on JavaScript, but I'm not against going back to Golang if they fully support the Golang SDK, in both Android and iOS environments. I mean, it probably would be a better solution than JavaScript in that case. But as long as I don't have to write all the bridge glue code, that would be great.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So what about so what have you learned about interacting with the APIs that Hedera, with the crypto APIs, the HTS APIs? So what have you learned about working with those?
They're pretty straightforward. They're easy to figure out. There's good examples out there for them in the different languages. There's subtle differences, in between the JavaScript one and the Golang one that I had, with the way that exceptions are handled and thrown with the status codes. So I've had to deal with that a little bit in the latest version when I switched to the JavaScript one. The documentation, it's not difficult to get through it and figure out if you're an experienced developer. I've had to learn the crypto API, the HTS API, and soon the NFT one. We do plan to add NFT support, and of course, they've announced that they're going to have staking at the end of the year, so that's more work for us to do. So yeah, at the point at this time, I'm a little overwhelmed with the amount of work that Hedera keeps bringing our way, and
Right.
but sure, it would be nice to grow the development team. But
Right. Yeah, because up until recently, it feels like we kept up, and in fact, we're kind of chomping at the bit, waiting for the next, waiting for them to fix the last thing or get the
that's
new
right.
thing out. But now it's like, boom, they're starting to blow our doors off a little bit. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
and I just turned 50 this year, and I'd rather be like vacationing with my wife or riding my new Harley Davidson Pan America motorcycle, or
Yeah.
playing in my 90s cover band Agent Mulder, so that's
Right.
kind of stuff I like to do. And yeah, but I've got a lot on my plate with Ledgerama and Wallawallet. And of course I enjoy the work. I mean, I'm doing what I love. So
Yeah. Yeah. We just need a few more years from you, Rob. Just a few more, and then I think we'll be able to sail off into the sunset on our HBAR Neptune rocket. All right. So what's that?
I'll try to keep it up.
Yeah. Appreciate it. So what advice would you give to somebody building on Hedera? We've got, there's a lot of gunslingers out there. There's a lot of interest in Hedera. There's a lot of interest in crypto space in general. I mean, there really is a gold rush going on, as we all know. I mean, from May of 2020 to May of 2021, over $2.25 trillion flowed into the crypto market space. So it really is a gold rush, and everybody knows it. Developers or everybody's business guys, developers, everybody that's in tech is starting to look at cryptocurrency, whether you're, 15 or 65, 75, it's starting to turn heads. So people are flooding into the space. What advice would you give to a developer, whether young or old, coming into the space?
Well, it's, dealing with Hedera, you're going to end up dealing with people's money, right? Because you're dealing with cryptocurrency, you're moving money around. And you have to be very careful with how you do that. You have to, understand exactly how the state management of your app is working, that everything's in a good state before these transactions are kicked off, that you're not messing up decimal points and things like that and sending more money than you intended out of somebody else's wallet, right?
Right.
You have to be careful managing their keys. You have to be very careful about all these things. I mean,
Man, managing their keys, that one is so brutal, and just kind of a little side note on that one. So we, so you and I have had many debates over security versus usability. There's been some long hours spent on those debates, and we wound up, based off of the things that you read, the arguments that you made, I went along and agreed that security was important. And it was, so basically the backstory there, we decided to go ahead and require biometric security for Wallawallet in order to access the keys. And my position was, man, that's going to really rule out a lot of people, because think of all the people that don't have Android devices, or people that have Android devices that don't support biometric security, or the people that are paranoid about giving up their biometric security, which I don't say paranoid, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, there's people that are just perhaps legitimately concerned that their biometric information is at risk. So there's all these kind of concerns floating around, and I was honestly, I was against requiring biometrics. I wanted to make it an option. Fast forward to a couple weeks ago, maybe it was even last week. I was on a Twitter Spaces, and Christian Hasker was there, and we were talking about Wallawallet and the approach that Wallawallet took, and why should people trust it, and how is it secure? And Christian Hasker piped in and said, "We at Hedera, we love Wallawallet's approach to security, because it's obvious that Rob took security seriously and put security first, and that's what Lehman does," right? So that was at the moment where I went, all right, Rob won the argument for a good reason. He's, that's the way Lehman thinks too. So we're building on Hashgraph, and if they're a security first, if they're security first, usability second, well then I guess I can get in line with that. So
security has to be at the forefront of your mind when you're dealing with cryptocurrency. And
yeah.
No matter how you deploy your app, you really have to think through exactly how it's going to be deployed, who's going to have access to what keys, how can they be compromised, that kind of thing. So with Wallawallet, we have to rely and depend on the secure element, or the secure enclave on the phone, which is a separate piece of hardware that manages the creation and signing, the creation of the private key and the management of it, so it never leaves that secure part of the device. And it's used to sign the transactions. And if it gets out of there, then it can be compromised in a number of different ways. So really, I know people have concerns about the biometrics. Hey, Google can steal my fingerprint and this and that. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing to stop them from putting, backdoors in their devices and even in their secure enclave, right? And if they wanted to, we just have to, in the end, we will have to trust that it is being implemented in the way that they say it's being implemented. and that, any engineers out there that are working on it, if there are backdoors, that they will come out in time and the people will know about it. But short of that, this is still the most secure mobile wallet in the way to store the secret keys, the recovery phrases, because it is tied to that secure element. The private key never leaves the secure element. It's tied to your biometric as well. So the attacker has to have physical access to the device to be able to recover data from it, and to you too, because it's tied to the biometric. So I highly recommend that everybody enable, the 6-digit PIN code that we have on there to prevent against a wrench attack. Because if somebody did get to your phone and you use your fingerprint or your face to get into Wallawallet, as long as you have that 6-digit code and it's obviously active, then they're not going to be able to get in there without knowing that code. And
So for people out there that don't know, what's a wrench attack?
oh, somebody hits you over the head with a wrench, grabs your phone.
That's my favorite threat vector, the wrench attack. Physical access. I mean, that is the primary security. That's always the number one security risk, is physical access. So yeah, somebody can hit you in the head with a wrench and get in your pocket and get your phone.
And you really got to be ultra paranoid like I am too. And unfortunately, the Wallawallet could use one or two minor improvements regarding that too. I mean, if you're setting up a new wallet and there's a security camera over your head, filming everything that you're doing, and they could be grabbing your phrase as well. You've got to consider things like that too. And then in addition to protecting your phrases, yeah, if you're going to take responsibility for these key phrases, you've got to think about all kinds of things. You've got to think about, well, what happens if my house burns down and my only copy of the phrase was in my house somewhere in the kitchen, and then or in a safe somewhere and the safe melts, or you get hit in a flood. Did you laminate it so that it's protected from the water damage? Do you have it in multiple secure places that you trust? Is it, are they secure so that nobody can sneak in, take a picture of it, and then walk off with your phrase? Lots of things like that to consider. And there's different strategies that you can research and see what others have done, like the Winklevoss twins, who my understanding is, they cut up the different parts of their phrases and distribute them and store them in parts of the phrases in different, safety deposit boxes in banks all across the country. So
yeah, right. Yeah, all those security. I'm really hoping that we can come up with some really slick, in time, that we can come up with some really slick solutions and alternatives, because keeping stamped aluminum plates in a fireproof safe is a little archaic. I mean, it's like all this technology and all this cool crypto stuff, but we're stamping aluminum plates and storing and burying them underground. It's like, what kind of world are we living in? It's very strange.
It's true. And people, ideally in Wallawallet, even people should have the option. Do I want custody of my own keys or do I not? Right. If I trust a third party like Kingdom Trust or whoever to store my crypto for me, it would be nice in Wallawallet just to select that option, pay the fees for them to handle it, and maybe you're covered by some insurance in case something happens. Right. So it would be nice to be able to offer, the users those features, and maybe one day we can do that. But right now, with Wallawallet, you own your keys, and it's your responsibility to protect them and to make sure that nothing happens to them.
Right. Yep. That's just the state of cryptocurrency right now. In general, we're working on making user friendly experience in general. But right now, yeah, you absolutely have to be security conscious. We've talked about this before, but one of my favorite articles was, from the very beginning when I was learning about securing cryptocurrency, was like, showed a picture of a computer with the disk drive out and a little cup sitting in the disk drive. It's like, basically the caption was, if you think that this is a cup holder, right, talking about the disk drive sticking out of a desktop computer, if you think this is a cup holder, you don't have any business owning Bitcoin. It's that kind of thing. You've got to be security conscious. You've got to be a little tech savvy. Gary Gensler, the new chair of the SEC, rates technical difficulty as one of the primary risks for investors. That's one of the things that he's most concerned about protecting investors, is just from the technical risk of these investments, because you have to be pretty savvy. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to mention a couple of other things too with regard to security. If you're really paranoid like I am too, I set my wallet to authenticate on every action, and it's an iPhone with a camera, so I'd have to look at it for every single action, so that in case there's a 5-minute timeout on there for idle time, that if somebody got your phone, that they could potentially do something. And also just to mention too, because a lot of people apparently run into this, if you do change your biometrics on the phone, in the case of the Android, I believe if you change your fingerprint and add an additional fingerprint or additional face or whatever, you won't be able to access the data. But if you change it back to the way it was, you'll be able to access it again. But on the iPhone, you won't ever be able to access it again.
So it's recoverable with the recovery phrase. As long as you've
always recoverable with the recovery phrase and the account numbers, right?
Right. So you've got to have those, but the wallet data itself on the device will become corrupted for security purposes, just like with your iPad. If you try and enter in a PIN code too many times into an iPad, it'll erase the data on the iPad.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've done a backup so you can still access your data, but
and I just want to mention that I do use Wallawallet for my own accounts. I built this wallet a lot for myself as well. So it's not like the Pfizer CEO who won't take his own vaccine, and I don't blame him for that, but I do use my own product. So.
That's right. Yeah, we eat our own food for sure. And actually, and so does Hedera. They can't officially, they can't officially support any wallet, but I know that there's a number of folks over at Hedera that are using Wallawallet because they've told me that's their wallet of choice, and I believe them. We've been out there since the beginning, and it's the most secure. So, so when they say that, I believe them. Okay, so getting back to back into the HTS stuff a little bit, how easy or challenging was it to integrate HTS into Wallawallet? HTS is a really new service. It came out and it's just, it's changing and evolving at a lightning pace. What were some of the challenges and benefits of working with HTS?
Well, I'm still facing one, I think at least one challenge, but it's, overall the biggest challenges I've had were with the SDK, but once I started getting into HTS, it wasn't too bad, but I did have the issues with some of the data that I had to get from Dragonglass versus from the public mirror. Hedera is having a problem with the mirror right now, giving me certain token metadata information for accounts that are treasury accounts. So I'm using Dragonglass at the moment for that, but you have to think about all kinds of different scenarios. Like, first of all, you don't have the token symbol when you get the balances from somebody's account, right? So now you need to look up what the token symbols are for each one of those tokens. So how do you do that? Do you look them up one by one and send one query at a time to Hedera to get the information? That's a lot of network overhead to do something like that. Do you get them in batch? Can you even do that? So you have to look at the APIs and determine whether you can do that or not. And, right now I get them from Dragonglass, but how are they supported in batch, right? They're through get query parameters, right? Well, you can only have so many on there before you exceed the limit for a URL. So you have to consider things like that too. Well, what if the account has 1,000 tokens, right? I'm not even sure right now what the limit on that is. I know there's probably a limit, maybe it's 1,000 or 500, but they do send you back pages of token data when you query them in bulk. And I think Hedera limits it to 500 tokens at a time. So then you have to consider, well, what if they do have more than 500 tokens at a time? Then you got to page through them, and that's more time lost, right? So you have to cache the data. You cache it in a local device, and maybe even in memory, because if you're showing up lots of different accounts and token data, you want this stuff to be very responsive and very fast. So I do that. I cache it on disk on the device. I cache it in memory. I pull it from Dragonglass and Hedera as I need to pull the data as best I can. I haven't fixed the paging issue yet, so I will look into that. It might not be out there for the first release, but hopefully shortly after. I'm not expecting people to have thousands of tokens right at the bat. So, but I do want to get that addressed soon. Yeah, so you have to consider those kind of things, and then there's the whole workflow, right? So you can't just send a token to somebody's account, because the account has to first be associated with that token. So if I send you a Wallawallet token, Jeremy, you have to basically indicate that you want to receive Wallawallet tokens. So you have to take that token ID for Wallawallet and associate it to your account. And you can do that in the new version of Wallawallet that's coming out soon. You'll just drill down to your account. You'll click on the associate token button. It'll ask you for the token ID. You'll be warned to make sure you get this from a trusted source, because anybody can name their token Wallawallet, right? But the way it's the real Wallawallet token is it's the official token ID that is associated with our company, which we would have to publish somewhere somehow.
Right.
So people have to be aware that, just because the symbol says it's one thing doesn't mean that it actually is that thing. So you have to associate the tokens that you want with the account, and only those tokens you'll be able to receive to that account. And one thing we don't support yet is the KYC flag, or setting the KYC flag. A future version of Wallawallet, I do want to have the ability to create and update tokens and wipe tokens, burn tokens, all those features that you see in the API, including the KYC flag, because there might be some cases where people do want to have KYC on a token, right? So,
Sure.
but that means that you would have to approve every person, who can receive that token and send it, right? So, so we would need to come up with some workflow where I can easily take your account ID and then approve it and mark the KYC flag, right?
Right.
So that would be in a future version of Wallawallet. So you have to consider all of these kinds of issues and how you're going to be dealing with them in your application, depending on what your application does and what the needs are.
Right. Hey, everybody. So so Rob and I left Rob's living room, and now we have joined the HBAR Foundry. Welcome. Say hello to the HBAR Foundry here. This is a group that was started last year in 2020 around August. A number of us Hedera folks got together. We wanted to form a group to solve problems that we were all running up against together. Individually, we were running up against issues, business guys, dev guys. So we wanted to have a place where we could get together every Friday to blow off steam and talk shop and get into things Hedera. So really pleased to take this opportunity to kind of say hello to the HBAR Foundry. And I wanted to open up one of my last questions to all of the folks here. So this is it's just more of a general question. And let me get back to it here because of course now I'm on a different screen. So the last question that I had for Rob, and the one that I wanted to open up to everybody here in the HBAR Foundry was, are there any words of wisdom you have for other developers that are looking at using HTS? So throughout this engineering insights type blog recording that Rob and I have been doing, we've been talking a lot about Hedera Token Service, some of the challenges and some of the benefits, the things that we've been running up against. And so so for any folks out there, that have some experience with HTS, what words of wisdom have you got for other developers and other people that are coming into the space? There's a lot of people, a lot of talent, and a lot of money flowing into the space right now. So for the folks that are interested in building on Hedera and Hedera Token Service, what kind of words of wisdom do we have for them? And I'm gonna, if it's all right, Rahul. We haven't seen you in a while, and so I'm going to pick on you first. Have you got any words of wisdom for the folks out there that want to build on HTS? And don't worry, we can edit too, so you can take your time.
I feel like talking to the community is really important. I think people think HTS runs on its own. That's very easy, but the really fun stuff within HTS comes when you play with HCS. So understanding about the SDKs, how decisions are made, is really, really crucial.
Right. How about you, Rob? What kind of words of wisdom have you got for developers out there that want to come into the space and build on Hedera Token Service?
Oh, I don't know. I'm very bad at giving advice or wisdom. But I mean, there's HTS, there's NFTs, soon there will be HATs, as we discussed, right? Hopefully. It seems like there's a whole bunch of, and then as Rahul just mentioned, there's also HCS. There's all kinds of different technologies, even within the Hedera ecosystem, that you need to consider, when it comes to implementing or using tokens. And I'm not really sure how, in the end, it's all going to look in our wallet app, for example, right? With so many different options out there, and with anybody being able to create custom solutions, how easy is it going to be to integrate somebody's HCS token into Wallawallet? I don't know. So I think there's still a bunch of things that I'm not clear on and things that I'm not sure about. I mean, Jason probably has some more insight into all of that than I do. I pretty much covered a bunch of the things that I've already talked about, my challenges, right, with HTS and the implementation, and there are some known issues with even the Hedera mirror node, which a defect that I opened up, recently on. But there's some exciting things too. Like we talked in the Foundry the other week about the custom fees for tokens. I mean, to me, that's a really cool feature. Somebody can create a token, can attach a fee to it, and then make that token popular, and then automatically get paid for, its use. So my goal is to make it really easy on Wallawallet for people to create those kind of tokens, set those fee schedules so that they can build a business off of that and distribute a token for whatever, legal purpose, hopefully. But I'm sticking pretty close right now to the HTS API, and I haven't really gone beyond that for NFTs because that's a whole different things.
So Glenn, how does custom fees, how does that affect your business? So we've got Hedera token service and the ability to tack custom fees onto a token transaction. What kind of implications does that have for Inara and a streaming ebook service?
Right. Well, it potentially could be huge. We've been talking about royalties in the context of HTS for some months now,
right?
And it's very exciting. We're bringing in tokens into our product roadmap, and it's potentially huge because as we know in the book publishing industry, the traditional industry, part of the industry, royalties are very important. And right now in the electronic space, there's no way for authors to earn any money other than to sell their ebooks through one or more different channels that are available. So to be able to, well, it's really twofold. One is just for the author publisher to get a piece of the action every time that unique digital copy of that ebook changes hands. That's
huge.
That's potentially huge. The other aspect of that are the really the marketing aspects of it, in that the author potentially could use tokens as a way to build community, to build their reader base, and to engage their reader community in some very important ways that they're just not able to do right now with the more popular ways of publishing, selling, and distributing ebooks. So where Inara sits in this, right now we have streaming ebooks, micropayments, the ability for readers to only pay for what they read, one page at a time, and for authors, and every time the page turns, the author earns. Now with tokens, what we're looking to do is to layer tokens onto the micropayments model, and then to kind of really supercharge micropayments in a way so that the micropayments are like a gateway into that whole thing of readers being able to engage with the authors and the authors to build community,
right?
And then just supercharge that whole process.
Right. Yeah. Social money. I mean, the ability of Hedera tokens to incentivize social networks is just incredible. I mean, that's one of the things that's, I mean, it's going to be huge. When Lehman said tokenize the world, I really think that's going to happen. I mean, there was talk about Joey coin and Suzy coin back in 2016, kind of jokingly, but I really think that there will be classes of elementary school kids creating their own economies with Joey and actually creating tokens on computers. They're not going to be using Ethereum to do it, though. I don't think. I think they're going to be using Hashgraph. So Jason, if you don't mind, what have you come across in your exploration of Hedera token service that you might pass on to other developers that are coming into the space?
First off, it's moving fast. Hedera really is on board for getting a good, robust native implementation of tokens and NFTs on the ledger layer one.
Right. So that's an important question. And if you could just like the difference between native versus ERC20, right? So as I understand it, not being a developer, Hedera token service is basically removing the need for this kind of ERC20 intermediary, right? And makes the tokens native on the platform. So if you maybe you could explain that, or.
Well, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. We have ERC20 tokens and other types of tokens on the Ethereum, for example, are implemented by a smart contract, and they follow a standard that all wallets can interact with. In our space, in the Hedera space, it's a little different because you're interacting natively with the ledger itself, and the definition of a token you can query the network for and find out what the ground rules are. Can you burn? Can you mint? Can you confiscate a token from an account? Is KYC part of the equation? Is KYC not part of the equation? Is there a administrative key hanging out there that somebody can change the rules of the game? You know, can they change the fees? What we mentioned earlier, that we have this feature where you can get royalties or other types of compensation when a token goes from one wallet to another. There can be a fee assessed, and it's enforced by the network itself. So you don't have to really, you trust, but you don't have to trust that
Right.
as when you mint a token that you're going to get royalties in the future. So in a way, it's buyer beware that you have to look up your token when you get it. When you saying I want to be part of this token system, you have to look at it. It's like, okay, what are the rules are? And that's a new space that we have to explore, the risk involved with that. At the same time, it's a little more clear in the definition. There's less hiding. You don't have to read the smart contract line by line because you
Right.
know what the rules of the road are. And it's, I also like to say that it's a very new space, and there's still time to look into it if you have your idea that we're new to this, and there's opportunities to help find missing features.
Absolutely.
If we've missed if the community has missed a feature in this, there's still time to see to it getting added before we get too far down the road.
Right. And I see all these, and when I look at a lot of these different tokens, right, you see the security audit, right? There's always, they advertise that their contracts have been audited, right? It seems like that creates a lot of perhaps unnecessary work and headache, right? All these audits that have to be done. Whereas if you've got it native, if you've got these tokens native on a platform, the work's all that audit, you can save yourself that headache. It seems like every time, because the work has been done. And as long as it's been being done securely and properly on the Hedera network, that you audit it once and you're done. It's being done correctly every time, over and over. And I mean, the amount of money that people are spending, not only on gas costs, but also on auditing their smart contracts. I mean, to me, it just the price point of building on Hedera is order. And people say this a lot, but orders of magnitude less, and it literally is like magnitudes less to build tokens on Hedera than it is Ethereum. I mean, it's that much cheaper. When we look at some of the costs that they're talking about, to create these NFTs and stuff, the gas costs are just insane. We don't have that in the Hedera world. So, yeah. So Jonathan, how about you? You guys are working all kinds of cool stuff over at True Sky. What have you got for the rest of the world? What are you guys thinking up in Canada, in Vancouver? What are you guys thinking about Hedera token service? What's hot on your plate?
Well, I think one of the key things that we're working on, and there's a couple of things that we're working on, is how geolocation in metadata imbued into a token is interesting for discovery. So right now, for tokens, they're usually discovered in kind of a shop scenario. So you go to a website and you say, you have a list of all the different tokens. Imagine if the tokens can be actually discovered in the real world. So we're just kind of putting geolocation together with tokens. And number one on that list is, how do you validate that those tokens are in that geographical location and in that time space, right? So I think there's a lot of innovation that can happen there.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, really excited about the geolocation stuff. There's all kinds of crazy use cases that can come out of that, and we've had some fun conversations about those. Look forward to hearing more and talking about those more, because I think those are big. So Roland, I saved the best for last here, buddy. You and I have been together we've been working together almost as long as Rob and I have. Actually, Jonathan and I go back, I think, the longest. That conversation there in Dallas at the Gossip Bar in Dallas. I think, I think Jonathan and I have been buddies about as long as I've been in Hedera space. But Roland, you've been right there since the beginning too, buddy. And actually, your podcast, the Ecclesia podcast that you gave, was one of the very, very early ones with Paul Madsen. And the radical markets idea I just fell in love with, and it relates to the project that Rob and I have been building on to a high degree. So we've been working closely, really since early on. So what kinds of things are you thinking about with Hedera Token Service, the clients that you work with, the coworkers, the people in your community? You're over there in Switzerland, which is to a high degree the kind of heart and pulse of this whole Ethereum tokens crypto world. I mean, so much of it is coming out of Switzerland. I'm fascinated to hear what you've got, what you see on the horizon for Hedera Token Service.
Oh, the expectation is super high, right? So, thank you very much, and thank you, Jeremy. It was an awesome journey until now. And yeah, what I can say first is that, number one, thank you that you remember the radical markets. I still think that this is very, very an important theme. And when we think about all the sustainability cases that will come, all the green, the planet, there is so much in there where Hedera can and will play an important role. So over here we have, of course, 11 unicorns in front, sitting at my door front. So sometimes it's hard to shout through the noise. And number two, Switzerland is also always banks and finance, and so you have, of course, also a lot of use cases in that space. I would say, when I go back to the very first question you had, what to give out there, or what others could do, is please chime in, come and discuss, join the conversation, go to this HIP, this Hedera improvement process infrastructure. We really need to build together the language that this awesome technology is capable of giving us in the different use cases we have. So right. Is it radical markets? Is it more the finance stuff with the lots of classic decentralized stuff? Is it more really next generation marketplaces? Hedera is an awesome technology, and it right. deserves that we figure it out together, how to do the best out of it.
Right. So Jesse, I didn't mean to forget about you, bud. I don't. Are you still eating cereal? Have you got anything you want to add before I wrap up the conversation on Hedera Token Service over here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Why not?
Well, we live and breathe this stuff, right? So we're going to talk about it all the time. I'll talk about it some more.
Might as well. I just think there's, we're at such a crossroads with all of this stuff right now. The DLT space has been around for 12, 13 years now. I mean, if you really want to extrapolate, it's, all the way back to the 80s even. But I mean, really, it's starting to come to the forefront of the consciousness of society. And I think when that sort of thing happens, and we really focus in on something, it's where a lot of exciting stuff happens. A lot of stuff gets broken. A lot of stuff goes wrong, but then out of that comes, and you never really see it coming or know when it's going to happen, but you wake up one day and the world is a completely different place than it was the day before. And no one can ever really pinpoint where that is, but I think right now a lot of things are being set in place to have that happen in the not too distant future. And I think, especially with NFTs and the Hedera token service and everything that the Hedera network can do in terms of performance and security and reliability, I just think that it's going to play such a big part in the future of tomorrow. And I'm super excited to see what everyone comes up with. Everyone on this call has had, a very interesting and unique take on where they would like to see these sorts of things go. And I think that's just the beauty of it, is everyone is going to be able to create and use these new tool sets to come up with things that no one's ever been able to imagine before now. Right. And I'm just super excited for it. So yeah, it's awesome. If there's one take I can leave, it's just that I'm incredibly bullish on on everything that is being developed with, you know, such talented people such as yourselves. So
Awesome.
super excited for the future.
Very cool. Yep, that basically sums it up. So on that note, I'm gonna wrap up this this last little session. Thanks to the Foundry folks that have showed up on this Friday and show up almost every Friday. And thank you guys so much for being here and being with Ledgerama and, you know, being with us on this journey. And as Wallawallet grows and develops and becomes what we want to be, the shining jewel in the HBAR community, it's just great to have all you guys along for the ride. Can't thank you enough. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you folks next time.
Bye, everyone.
We want to live in a world where you can trust people online. A world where everyone is free to forge their own financial destiny. A world where people can safely share information that is valuable and true. It should be easy, and it can even be fun. Hedera Hashgraph has built the trust layer of the internet. Wallawallet is how you use it.